So I know you all have seen the Women in PST presentation before, but I'm going to just share one slide really quick here. Okay, can you all see my slide? The slide? Do you see the slide?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay.
Yep.
So I just wanted to share this one slide to remind us all of kind of our broader objectives for the Women in PST program that you all are helping to achieve. So as you all know, women will be absolutely integral and critical to solving challenges related to power system transformation. And we feel that you all are really embarking on a journey to be champions within this transformation. So during the summer, we saw each of you dive in on really cutting edge technical topics related to decarbonization of power systems. And personally, my favorite part was joining with you all to experience the sea change training and really begin to address our limiting beliefs and empower ourselves to make changes, and also to learn how to support others in doing the same. We were also joined by many women leaders this summer in the field to share their experiences. We have Cynthia on the call today, which is amazing. And I was so happy that we had those really rich exchanges through our coffee breaks with Cynthia, Lena, Julia, and others. So during the next phase, we plan to continue to support you all as you network within academic and professional settings, and to really be advocates for you all in any way that we can. We also hope that you will come back either virtually or in person next summer to share your achievements and progress with our next round of Women in PST interns. We want to create a space with you all where we can all support each other over time and continue to grow and achieve our greatest potential. I know the future is just so bright for you all, and I'm just so inspired and feel so fortunate that we had this incredible group of women as the pioneers for Women in PST this summer. So I will stop there, and I will actually turn it now to Karin.
Thanks, Sadie. I think you had to stop because you're getting choked up.
I know, and I'm really passionate about working with you all. So thank you all so much.
Yeah, no, this is very exciting. And I actually can't believe that this summer has gone by so quickly. I was looking at my calendar the other day and thinking, there's no way these people just started and I barely got a chance to know them, And so I can only, I don't want to just echo what Sadie said. I'll be really brief. It's been absolutely a huge pleasure to see this group of people coming through both NREL and EPRI this summer. And we've been really impressed, not just with the work that everybody's doing, but with the fact that this has been a really good first step in the Women in PST program overall. I couldn't have hoped for a better launch of this graduate intern program. And I think that the work that Sadie and Haley have done, and that all of you have really put those first foundational stones into, is launching a really good overall structure for increasing the pipeline of women who are very important participants in this career track and who are going to be absolutely instrumental in changing the power system. And huge thanks to Cynthia and the other leaders who've been devoting, it's late Friday night in Indonesia right now. So thank you, Cynthia, for all of the time and energy and encouragement that you've given to other people in your organization to show leadership and to be there as mentors to some of the younger women in this program. And I'm very excited to see where this goes. So thanks everybody for participating, and let's go. I'll hand it back to Haley. I'm really excited to see what everybody has been learning today. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Sadie. Thanks, Karin. I think that's a great way to set the tone for today. I am also really thrilled and just looking forward to hearing a lot about what the graduate interns have been up to this summer. But I think for those of you who don't know me, my name is Haley Lucas, and I do just want to say thank you for being here this morning. Well, all of us are this evening. I know it's late for some of you, to just have a learning and discussion opportunity with the first cohort of Women in PST interns today. So we do have a pretty cool presentation. And
a little.
Oh, bummer. Okay, I'll go off video and see if that helps. Is this okay now? Is my audio fine?
We can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, awesome. I was just saying we have about 7 total presentations today, and each intern will have 10 or so minutes to present on their summer research, their experience with women in PST, or whatever other topics they deem pertinent to power system transformation and they want to talk about. followed by 5 or so minutes of open question and answer. I think we'll keep this pretty casual, so feel free to raise your hand or drop questions in the chat. We really want to make this an exchange. So with all that being said, I think I'm going to ask Manisha Rauniyar, a recent graduate from South Dakota State University, to kick us off. Manisha, do you want to go ahead and share your screen and get started?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Can you see my screen, everyone?
We can. It's not in present mode yet. I think.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. So, good morning, everyone. So, I'd like to begin from my academic and professional background. So, I'm Manisha Rauniyar. I'm originally from Nepal, and I finished my bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Nepal. And then in 2019, I came United States, and then I finished my master's degree in electrical engineering with a specialization in the power systems. And then after finishing my master's degree, I got opportunity to do a research internship at National Renewable Energy Lab and under the supervision of Dr. Ismail and Dr. Harsa, and as well as Hallie and Sadie, who provided me with the opportunity to be the part of the first cohort group of women in power system transformation. So, and then currently, like after finishing my internship, I recently joined EPRI, and my manager is Ben York. So, today we are going through some of the summary of the research work that I completed in my summer internship. And there were two projects that I participated in. And the first project was on utilizing the distributed energy resources, like that can be like the PV or the battery energy resource that can be used as a backup resources when there can be sudden fault in the power system feeder model. So I'll go through in detail in the next few slides. And the next project was on producing the power system feeder model in the interactive Google Map. And so the Python toolbox or API tool was developed that can help in like getting the idea of how the power system feeder model looks like in the Google Map. So the research interest areas in power systems are shared. These are the following points which makes me interested or on which I'm interested. So the first is the power system modeling and dynamics, and along with the state and parameter estimation. So these are the two topics which is the main core area of my master's thesis as well, where I published some of the papers. And I also got interested. I did some projects in co-simulation, like simulating together two different simulator tools. And similarly, I also grade some projects in high performance computing, like we can use the supercomputers or the cluster, which I have I have been using at South Dakota State University for parallelizing the power system simulations. Similarly, I did some projects in control and optimization for the fast frequency support and utilizing the model predictive control. So I'd like to quickly go through the research work that I finished. So starting with the power system feeder model producing in the interactive Google Map. So the work was done through it involved different data pre-processing steps, and the most important thing is the Python packages. I have been using Python during my masters, but I got familiar with different new packages of the Python, and so these are the list of different Python packages that has been used while producing the interactive Google Map. So the major impact that it will produce, it will help in the power research community is that it will give the idea, or it gives us a sense of how much useful area can be used if we assume the customer has installed rooftop PV. So the main thing is that it will help us in modeling approximation. And this is the small snapshot of the outcome that has been produced as the interactive in the Google Map, the power system model. And so the next further work that can be done in this task is that we can also include the power flow analysis using the different other packages like Panda Power. So this was the brief overview of the first project, and the second project was done on the Fleischer application, that stands for the fault location isolation service restoration utilizing the distributed energy resources. And this task was done in OpenDSS simulator. So the main objective of this task is that it will it will help in utilizing the DR resources. Suppose if there are fault or there can be storms in the power grid network. So at that time, the first thing that we have to do is that we have to locate the damaged part in the feeder. And once we are able to locate the damaged part or where the fault is happening, then at that time we will be able to isolate the damaged part. And if we once we isolate the damaged part, then we can re-energize the remaining part of the feeder that is not affected by the fault, and we can re-energize them by using the distributed energy resources that can be PV or that can be battery energy resources. So it will not only reduce the number of affected customers, but it will also improve the understanding of the what challenges and the benefits of the DRs will have, or while implementing the DRs while during the advanced distribution management application. So here is a brief a single line diagram that gives the concept of the what does the feeder model looks like. So we have circuit 2 recloser and circuit 3 recloser over here, and that is and we can see the red boxes represents it is normally closed, and there is one normally open tie switch. So what we are assuming that we will have our fault that will happen at 3 different points of circuit 3 recloser, and then we will use this. We will also have one tie switch that will be implemented once the fault happens in any of the points in circuit 3 feeder. So we also have 2 battery resources at different locations of the feeder that is used that can be operated in a grid following or grid forming mode. So here is the what the power system model looks in OpenDSS, and this is the single line diagram representation. So here you can see that the fault location are happening at the initial, middle, and the end region of the feeder, and then we have the battery backup over here at these locations. And so here what we can see is that we have the sequence of the simulation events over here. So we are seeing that for 0 to 10 seconds we have normal simulation, and then we are disabling this feeder that is normally open, and then we have the fault that is happening at 20 to 30 seconds. So in the graph you can see that at 20 to 30 seconds we have a fault, and there is a sudden increase in the current, and there is a drop down in the voltage completely to the 0, because we have our fault that happens in at 20 to 30 seconds. So not completely to 0, I'm sorry. So here you can see that it is from 20 to 30 seconds, there is a sudden drop in the voltage. And then what we are doing is that we want to separate the faulted part of the feeder, which means that we are opening the circuit 3 reclosure and S1 and S2 switches. So that is bringing the voltage back to the 0 level. Then after, what we will do with the next step is that we will clear the fault. We assume that the fault is cleared at that point, and then we will operate our battery energy resources that is here at B2, and we will also close our circuit 2 recloser, and we will and what it will help in a way is that it will reduce the number of affected customers, so that it can keep the power supply for rest of the loads or the consumers that are located beyond the S3 point and beyond the S2 point. So here what you can see in the next graph is that so we can see that at the voltage and the current curve at B2, which means that we are operating the B2, that is our battery energy resource, in a grid forming mode, and we have the it is operated at 100 to 110 seconds. We can see in the simulation event, and we can see that at 100 to 110 seconds, the current is going back to the nominal value, and the voltage is also getting back nearly close to the nominal value, which means that the B2 is operated in a grid forming mode, and it is helping to take back voltage to its original value. Similarly, we can also see the power flow at circuit 2 feeder, which means that we are once this section is isolated, the faulted region is isolated, we know that we are closing this circuit 2 recloser, which means that the power will go up to the higher value, so that it can feed the power supply to the rest of the customers or the end users over here. So we can see the changes in the power flow as well here, going back to the higher value. And this is the brief overview of the projects that I completed during my summer research. And besides the technical part of the projects, I'd like to very much sincerely thank USAID team, NREL team, and Global PST Consortium, who took the initiative for organizing or making the women in power system transformation that helps to motivate not only me but entire women in the entire women who are involved in the engineering society or who are not involved. So it will encourage them, it will motivate them to face the challenges that they are encountering. And it was a really a good opportunity to attend those seminars that SE has organized and to get to talk with the humans who are already like in the engineering field and to share the experiences, to hear from them and how they are like how they are tackling those challenges. So it was really a great experience. I'd like to sincerely thank NREL team and my all team members, my mentors, from whom I learned a lot of things. And similarly, also I like to thank my manager Ben York, who provided me with the opportunity to join EPRI. And I'm still like looking forward to learn a lot from everyone. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Manisha. That was a really fantastic overview of all of the great work you did this summer.
Thank you.
I think we have now for some questions. Feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand. Looks like Cynthia, did you just raise your hand?
Yeah, thanks, Manisha. I think it's a very great presentation.
Thanks,
Yeah, I think you also presented it very eloquently, very confident, and also, very detailed in technical sense, in engineering sense. I think congratulations. Just
Thank you so
to
much.
just to look, in a broader, in one step back for the project that you or the project that you're doing, you have been how would you see this can be expanded or can be implemented into the real system, to be used or to be utilized in a certain distributed power system or with this renewable energy distributed energy resources? How would
Yeah.
this? How would you see this? It can be expanded or implemented for utilizations in other systems.
Yeah, of course, Cynthia. That's a really great question. Thank you for the question. So, of course, like whenever we do a task in power systems, then it is very important to know that how we are going to implement that in the real system. So, actually, what happens like it always used to be on my mind also. But once I joined NREL team and EPRI team, then I came to know that like the first part of the work will always be to test the system or to simulate the system and make some analysis before implementing those system into the real world, either that things is gonna work or not, or the results or the outcomes that we are expecting to like suppose I'm saying that I want to like once this part is isolated, then I want to feed rest of the consumers through the battery energy resources that I have over here. So before like getting or implementing this battery power or battery backup power in the real system, we have to test all the systems in a simulation, make some real-time simulation analysis or some steady state analysis, how it's going to work. So there is always a step of the work. So these things has been planned by the like the by the utilities or different researchers who are involved in the actual project. So once we have a plan or plan of the projects, then we take it through some of the steps in the simulation, do some real-time simulation analysis. Then we can make some ideas that either it's gonna really help to implement in the real world or not. So this is how like Cynthia, it has been planned that like we want to use the battery backup if there are certain fault or there can be storms or the natural disaster that can happen. And if there are certain faults that will happen in this certain section of the feeder, then we want to say that for the clean energy purpose also we want to utilize the battery backup or the PV resources that we have. And we start to think what will be the appropriate locations of those battery energy resources that can help to like feed the rest of the consumers or feed the that feed in the feeder part that is not affected. So this is how like it has been planned to do the analysis Yes, and the next step will be like to implement it in the real time application, real field application. So like this is the process of the work and how it has been planned to implement in the real world.
Yeah, I think it will be also good to take to next step that we also need to calculate the consequences on the cost of providing more protections and or providing more battery into the system. Yeah. Okay, I think that's great job already. Thanks for the presentations and the project that I think you enjoyed so much as well. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Yes, Cynthia. It was a great learning from everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent job, Manisha. Thank you so much. Very timely research. I think up next, if there's no other questions, we'll have Vicky Janita jump on and share her presentation. Thank you so much, Manisha. Great work.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Haley. Great job, Manisha. Great presentation. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna share my screen. Then, okay, so hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining this meeting, and thank you NREL, EPRI, G-PST for the opportunity to be here, join the first cohort and present what I did this past summer. My name is Vicky. I'm a summer intern at EPRI, specifically sitting in the resource adequacy team. Today I'll be presenting my summer project, which is net load forecasting for Southwest Power Pool. So the purpose of this project is actually to feed the forecast for their SPP resource adequacy case study. A little bit about me. I am the youngest of two. On the left, there's a picture of my family with my two senior dogs, my sister, my parents, and my brother-in-law. I'm originally from Jakarta, Indonesia. About 9 years ago, I came to the US to study Bachelor's of Science at Penn State. Fast forward 3 years later, I graduated with an energy engineering degree and work for a paper company as an energy analyst for about 5 years in Atlanta, Georgia. And then after 5 years, I decided that I want to go back to school. So now I'm a student at Duke University studying Masters of Environmental Management, focusing in energy and environment. Last year, or I guess my first year at Duke, I had the opportunity to work with Professor Luana Lima on net energy metering successor. The question stems from the idea that NEM usually inefficient and actually a disadvantage to the less privileged customers. In addition to that, the reason why I took that project is because my personal interest in energy justice. I believe in equal and equitable energy access for everyone. In my free time, I like to practice Mandarin, currently just using Duolingo. And when the weather is nice, when it's not too hot or not too cold, I like to play tennis or bake bread on my free time. So yeah, so fast forward, a glimpse into the result of this project. Here in the screen, you're seeing the net load forecast. There are 4 scenarios that I created. The first one is the base case, and the other 3 scenarios is low, medium, high energy growth. It depends on the input / assumptions that I use for the adoption of behind the meter DER and the penetration of light duty EVs. So the predicted load for 2030 right now is between 294,000 to 299,000 gigawatt hour, with the peak load ranging between 49 to 52 gigawatt. For reference, the the electric load in SPP's system in 2020 is about 261,000 gigawatt. So it's approximately 1.2% annual growth rate between 2020 to 2030. The method that I used was a very simple one. I just used a linear regression where I regressed the annual historical load per capita with the annual GDP per capita to create that base case forecast. And then to create the low, medium, high, I netted the base case with whatever load or generation profile from the DER and the EVs to create the final shape. The DER modeling was done using EPRI software called DER Vet. One of the input it needs is actually a PV generation profile for a region, which I took from NREL's PV watts calculator. The EV charging profile was modeled using Stanford Lab's speech data model. This is a scalable probabilistic estimates of EV charging by Siobhan Powell and the team. In this model, the data actually came from Bay Area / SF charging station, ChargePoint. That's the source of the data. So in order to, because my research is SPP and the data is California, there's some adjustment needed to be made to reflect better the infrastructure in the SPP and to reflect better the number of cars, because as we know, California is a bit like golden standard. They're better in the infrastructure and in the number of cars as well. So what I did is actually I compared the ratio between EV and charging stations of California versus the SPP regions. So again, pulling the picture from the 2 slides ago, this is the net load zone. We see that the low energy growth, which is actually assuming a high penetration of PV and low adoption of EVs, end up being lower than the base case with about 49-ish gigawatt hour observed as the peak load, and the values just keeps going up in between the scenarios. We see that the base case, even though in the total annual load sees, like second to the last out of these 4 bars, the peak load is the highest. Obviously, the other 3, because we have DER. In this case, actually the DER, if I forgot to mention, the DER that I put in the assumptions are rooftop PV and battery energy storage. So the battery energy storage obviously helps with the peak shaving, making that number kind of low compared to the base case scenario. So here's what the 24-hour load profile would look like. I picked one in the summer one is a day in July and the winter one is a day in December. For the summer one, the high, medium, low energy growth in general follows the load shape, a very similar shape for the base case scenario. And as you can see right here, the peak load, which in the base case was observed around 3-4 p.m., gets shaved in the scenarios with the DER. And earlier in the day, we see a higher load here because the battery becomes a load to charge them during the day, release those energy to help the system. Now, I think the winter one is a little bit more interesting than the summer. I personally didn't expect to be fluctuating that way. In the winter, we're observing 2 peaks for base case scenario. The first peak with the DER and EVs, we don't really see much shift in the hour of the peak. Instead, we actually see an increase of that peak. However, in the second peak, which is usually during the evening, we see a shift what previously happened around 7 p.m. Now we're seeing it closer to 10 or 11 p.m. During the day, it kind of fluctuates even more. Obviously, however, this depends on whatever the parameter that the user puts in. In my case, when I used the DER vet, I used the system to optimize it as if we're trying to do a saving, financial saving on the monthly bill. So if the tariff parameter that the user puts in has a time of use charge and the demand charge happens around 7, 8 a.m., the peak load hours is about 7, 8 a.m., the system will respond to it. So if we shift it, the peak will also shift, depends on whatever parameter we put in. So all models are wrong, but some are useful. I'm 100% sure mine is wrong, but I hope it is useful. Obviously, it is a very simple. I took some very simple assumptions. So for future improvement, we should look again into perhaps total GDP is not the best economic indicator. Instead, maybe we should look into what exactly the economic indicator for each region that they care about. Maybe for the Texas area, Texas, Oklahoma, perhaps earning from the oil industry sector or energy sector. And then from the north, like Iowa, probably like agriculture, right? So maybe total GDP is not the best indicator. Second, given SPP's coverage shape, which I know I didn't show the picture of the map, but it's not exactly like covering an entire state, but it has a little chunk on Montana, a little chunk on Arkansas, a little chunk on Iowa. So the thing is that what I did was I assume, for example, SPP only covers 50%, but those assumptions are super simplified and may not be right because the underlying note about it is that I'm assuming an equal distribution on the population, GDP, and the load across a region. The third one is I noticed because I use an annual load, it kind of cuts down the number of sample into very small, so it's a potential issue. Lastly, missing variables. If I look at the year-to-year load, we see some fluctuations despite the increasing GDP. So what causes those fluctuations? It could be energy efficiency. It could be the pandemic. So those are variables that are missing from the model. Finally, if given the chance to do this again, I would love to run it against various weather year, because in this case, the weather is not really used besides just creating the shape of the load to convert from an annual to an hourly 8760 loads. So yes, a lot of improvements on this model, but I think this is an opportunity that I would not have gotten if it weren't because of this program. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. Thank you, EPRI. Thank you, NREL, for this opportunity, for taking a chance on me and to meet everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicky. Great presentation. Very cool to learn about all of the different things that are going on within the Southwest Power Pool. Does anyone have any questions for Vicky?
Can I have a question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Janita. I think it's interesting to see. I was, in the power system before, so it's very interesting for me to hear all of this again. So it's very interesting and great presentation as well. One question is, you do make a certain lot forecasting with all these DR and EV factors into the system. Just curious on how the current, the utilities now in the system. I think the system size is quite similar to the Java Bali power system in terms of energy and as well as the peak load. But probably the profile is a bit different, the demand profile on the hour by hour basis. But I'm just curious on how, actually the utilities there or the power system operator there does their demand forecasting with the current system. I suppose there is also the R and EV, the charging station or home charging there in the system?
Yes, so I think it depends on the region, and this comes from my personal opinion because my research is on SPP, so I'm looking more closely into SPP, and I think I can only answer around SPP. To be quite frank, a lot of those new variables for SPP region aren't really. It doesn't really have a lot of information because the adoption of EV in the region is relatively really small compared to other states. And then the population density as well is kind of very relatively small compared to other states. So when I guess to answer in short, to answer your question, I'm not 100% sure how moving forward SPP or the load serving entities in the region would do that. But I think based on my readings, a lot of them did some sort of econometrics modeling to assess certain behavior and how adoption would impact the load as well. Yeah, so I think this is the part of the reason SPP also asked EPRI to conduct this a case study on resource adequacy, is that they want to see how does the system would look like in the next 10 years, given the new technologies as people start adopting, as the Biden administration start releasing money to promote EV infrastructure. So I think this is also, in my opinion, probably a new realm for them. So still under development.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's very interesting and looking forward to new development because we are now also, having, expected to have this new
Correct.
variable renewable energy coming into the system. So we need to have more capacity to do a better load forecasting, with this variability in the system. Thanks, Janita.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Vicky? Looks like we have a hand from Barbara. Go ahead, Barbara.
Hi there. Great presentation. Thank you so much. Just kind of following on with Cynthia's questions. So I think it's my understanding that the load serving entities would submit their load forecast to SPP and they sort of roll them up, where they might be closer to understanding what's happening on the system with respect to DER penetration and the changing profile based on EV use. It's such a big system, right, that I think, that's going to be lost in the load forecast uncertainty for a while. But I'm wondering with respect to, I'm really interested in the theme between that sort of traditional econometric long-term forecasting and when you pull it into medium term, when you pull it into a short term, when you add weather, how you can use some kind of machine learning, some kind of artificial intelligence to inform for load forecast better without sort of diluting the wisdom of the history that we get using econometrics and all the demographic and macroeconomic variables. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that artificial intelligence aspect, if that might be kind of something that ISOs use in the future.
I personally don't really know a lot about machine learning and artificial intelligence. I don't really have that background, so I can't really say if I think that's the future, but I do hear the hype over that topic. However, I think over the few readings that I've read about how a system or how a load entity or even just research paper doing load forecasting, very little of them actually does artificial intelligence. I think they mostly still rely on the good old reliable linear regression or multilinear regression. But I don't think that it's a no for a future of AI. Yeah.
Do you have any barriers with obtaining data?
Yes, I think in a sense that it's the data is on making the assumptions, because the load data itself is given from SPP, but so it's like a raw hourly data from SPP between 2012 to 2020. But there are some assumptions that I'm not 100% sure, or what SPP thinks about the system, right? Like how do they evaluate energy efficiency? What do they think their system would look like in the future, given or in the region around the EVs and everything. If I'm only using current trend, the thing is that, in my opinion, the SPP region is kind of delayed in that trend. For example, like North Dakota, I believe, did not have an EV up until 2017 registered in the state. But if we're looking at other states in 2017, for example, like California, they already have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of those. So when I'm making the assumptions of how many EVs will generate in 2030, and if I'm just assuming that it's going to follow the current trend, their EVs probably going to lies around 70,000 for the entire state, which may be an understatement. So I think that's the kind of barrier that I'm experiencing of, is this right? Instead of like getting the number itself, like it's more on the assumptions.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question.
Awesome. Thanks, Barbara. Thanks, Vicky. Excellent work.
Thank you.
If we don't have any more questions, maybe we'll go ahead and roll over to Ashlyn Hogan's presentation. Ashlyn, if you're ready, go ahead and share your screen.
Yeah, hi. You can see me there. I think, sorry, I'll just put this up first. Can you see my screen now?
Not right.
Oh yeah, maybe now. Can you see it now?
Still not yet.
Oh, here we go. There we go. Sorry about that. I just wanted to say that I think there could have been a mix-up between what the brief maybe the Irish people got and the American people got, because on the email it said that our presentation should be 2 to 3 slides. So this is going to be a little bit shorter than the others, but hopefully you'll like it nonetheless. So hi everyone, my name is Ashlyn Hogan, and I'm 22 years old and based in Dublin in Ireland. I have a BSc in mechanical engineering, and then I'm currently doing my master's in mechanical engineering with business. And as part of the master's, we do a 6-month internship, and I was lucky enough to get mine in EPRI. I've always been interested in energy and renewables, so it did feel like the perfect fit. I'm working in the technology innovation sector, which conducts a lot of research on to help inform the global society on energy related things and facilitate strategic decision making when it comes to pushing technology further. One of the main things I'm working on at the moment is a white paper on electric vehicles. The purpose of the paper is to set out how developments in energy efficiency, as well as integration of energy systems around the world, have enabled electric vehicles to become a real contender for replacing internal combustion engines. And as well as that, how their batteries and what's happening with their batteries affects other areas such as the grid, local resources, and how we power our homes, etc. So in essence, how electric vehicles are a product of energy efficiency. So what's next for me? I'm going to complete this internship, hopefully, and try learn as much as I can when I'm here, make some meaningful connections, and then I have my thesis to write, which I'm hoping to do on electric vehicles, and then a few more master's modules, and then graduate in May. Then after that, I'd like to travel for a bit. I'm aware that in the real working world, you don't get your summers off, whereas obviously students do. So I want to use my last one before going into a job, hopefully. Like to get a job in something that I'm interested in and with nice people, and then finally make a difference. I've always been interested in climate change and trying to reduce consumption, etc. So if I could get anything to do with that, that would be amazing. My generation will be the first to really suffer the effects and consequences of climate change. with the extreme weather conditions and power shortages and the shortages on food, etc. So it's something I've always been passionate about and would love to be a part of helping solve the crisis in whatever way I can. So in the brief we got, we were given 3 questions to answer on our women in PST experience. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. The first question was, do I feel more prepared after the programme to be a leader in the energy sector after my experience? So the short answer is yes. I feel like most of the work we did was on ourselves rather than each other, which I was not expecting. But in hindsight, it was more important because if we had a healthy mindset and outlook, then we'd be able to be in a stronger position to handle stress and various situations better and therefore be a better leader. I think my favorite part of the program was the way we were told to sit back and identify what we want or what we are afraid of and the reasons why. It's a rare occasion that I would sit down with myself and think deeply about things like that of my own accord. So I suppose by forcing us to think about these things, it made me realize more about myself. Also, the discussions with others in the whole group or else in the breakout rooms were really eye-opening and sparked new thoughts and ideas on how to think about things and cope. I think my main takeaway was that a lot of life experiences are about perception, as in we can all have the same experience on paper or the same scenario, but in our heads it all happened differently. So if you have a good mindset, that can change, that could be the difference between a bad experience and a good experience. So I do think, yeah, this has given us a lot of tools, specifically identify what you're feeling, why you're feeling like that and how you can improve it going forward, because as a leader you should be setting an example for others as how to handle things. The second question, why do I think that gender equity is critical for a power system or clean energy transformation based on the learning? Well, the sector is still dominated by men. For instance, in my college, I think in my year there was 29% girls, which is the highest they'd ever had, and I know that that was still a lot better than some of the others in the group. They were saying theirs was around like 3% or something. So I think having this lopsided ratio in the back of your mind can make you doubt yourself sometimes, and if you belong where you are. In our learning in the program, we talked a lot about our limiting beliefs and how to overcome them, and often a lot of people they were having this belief and they didn't even realize it was limiting themselves. So I found that quite interesting. And I think this has a lot to do with the gender equity in the working world, but obviously in our case, specific to the energy industry, where it's a lot more prevalent. So gender equity is critical in our sector so that women who want to pursue a career in energy feel that they can, because at the moment people and their skills are being underutilized, and we don't want to miss out on the potential that women could offer us because they don't feel like they belong here in our sector. And then the third and final question was, how would I like to, or how do I plan to support women in the energy sector going forward? So I suppose I'm more aware now of what to look out for and make sure people around me feel comfortable, and always offer an olive branch if they seem down or they want to talk about something. I hope to one day be in a leadership role where I'd be able to inspire other women to join the sector, and always, I suppose, ensure that tasks given out are equal between men and women and that there's not any favoritism there. And basically, yeah, that everyone feels comfortable where they are. I haven't taken part in a program like this before and I really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for letting me experience it. It was empowering to come together and talk about topics and feelings that were really common among all of us. And I hope I live up to the success of your guests and one day make women in the sector proud. So thank you. Sorry, it was a lot shorter than the others, but that was what was on the brief. So
that was absolutely perfect, Ashlyn. And just on a second too, I think it's really cool to hear your reflections on the women in PST experience, but I thought that the trainings we all went through together were really powerful. And so it's great to just hear your perspective on it.
Thank you.
Sadie, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to say I really enjoyed the piece there where you reflected on like the sea change training and kind of what you took away from that. And I would just encourage others, even if you didn't build that into your presentation, we'd love to just hear, you know, a couple thoughts on kind of how that piece of this program was for you. So thank you so much for sharing that. Really powerful. Thanks so much.
Oh. Are we doing questions now, Haley?
Yeah, go ahead, Karin.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I just would want to offer Aisling an opportunity if there is a highlight or two that you want to share from your technical work. I think we'd all love to hear about that as well. So if you want to just verbally want to share a little bit about your project and
yeah. Sorry, I didn't realize we have to share stuff on our technical side as well. The email just said so. Anyway, but
no, you're good.
Yeah, no, so the main thing I'm working on is a white paper on electric vehicles, and I'm working in the technical innovations team to kind of coordinate that. We're working on the first draft at the moment. It's really exciting. It's obviously a really current topic, electric vehicles, and their batteries that they use are still a big problem, so we're trying to find ways around that. The actual paper title is called The Fifth Wave of Energy Efficiency, so it's actually like a series. So the first, second, third, and fourth waves have already been written, and they're kind of all interconnected with each other, and it's actually really interesting to read back on them because it just kind of shows the growth of energy efficiency, as in some of the previous ones were like talking about Wi-Fi, which is obviously now such just a regular thing to us, but like it's just interesting to see the growth and how fast it is. So yeah, it's a really exciting topic. Really excited.
That's great, thank you. And it was really nice to hear about your answers to the questions that we gave you. It's interesting to get everyone's perspective, and obviously, you know, we're all at different stages in our lives and our careers, so it sounds like it had a big impact on you, which is really important. So thanks for sharing that.
Definitely, yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, both of you. Are there any other questions for Ashlyn? All right, well, I think I have it kind of in the schedule to take a 5-minute break at this point, but I think if we're all feeling comfortable, maybe we can just go ahead and jump into the next presentation. Thank you so much, Ashlyn. Awesome to hear your reflections. And I think up next we have Mayuri Roy Choudhury. If you want to go ahead and share your screen.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Can you see my slide?
Not quite yet.
Now can you see my slide?
Yep.
Okay. So hi everyone, my name is Mayuri, and I'm working as an intern with EPRI. I'm working with the technology innovation team, and I'm also a part of the Women in Power System Transformation program. So just to give a brief background about myself, I'm a PhD student in sustainable energy from Arizona State University, and my research interest is in the area of innovative energy transition technologies, as well as the application of data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence in the field of sustainable energy. So today I'm going to discuss about a topic called electric vehicle charging infrastructure reliability in the United States. This is an important topic to discuss because the future of EV adoption is highly reliant on EV infrastructure reliability. Also, other major issues such as climate change, sustainable energy transition, and even our economy in general is very dependent on EV infrastructure reliability. So before I dive into my topic, I really want to thank the Global PST Consortium as well as EPRI and NREL for considering me to be a part of the Women in Power System Transformation Program. I really learned a lot from this program, and I'm really grateful to everyone for giving me this opportunity to present my research today and also to be a part of the program. So before I dive into the question, like what is EV charging infrastructure reliability, I first want to, it's very important to understand the parts of an EV infrastructure. So if you can see the figure in my slide, You can, I want to, this is a model of a EV DC fast charging station. And over here, you can see there are two kiosks or posts. And the green dotted line represents EV service equipments, and the orange dotted line represents connectors. So these are some important EV charging infrastructure parts which are important to understand before we proceed to in this presentation. And now coming back to the question, like what do we mean by EV infrastructure reliability? So there is no particular definition of EV infrastructure reliability. EV charging reliability can be measured in a variety of ways. So in terms of functionality, EV charging reliability generally means the performance of EV charging stations in delivering, the performance of EV charging stations in delivering electricity to the EVs. The California Energy Commission describes reliability in terms of functionality as any element of the EV service equipment, whether it's a hardware or a software, should be operational to successfully charge a EV at a public charging station. So that's the functional definition of reliability. Now, when it comes to uptime charging, so in terms of uptime charging, EV reliability is defined in a slightly different way. It is defined in terms of operational hours and times and the working time hours. So basically, EV reliability, again, the Energy Commission defines EV reliability in terms of uptime operational hours, that 97% of the EV service equipments should be operational of standard operating hours for a period of 5 years from the time the EV infrastructure is commissioned. So, so basically, it's more like how much percentage of the operating hours are the EV service equipments are operating. And it's important to note that different states in the United States have different uptime charging criteria. For instance, in California, the uptime charging criteria is 97% of the operating hours, whereas in the Northeast, it is Northeast states of the US, it is 99% of the operating hours. So that's EV reliability in terms of uptime charging. Then in terms of EV drivers, it's also important to understand reliability in terms of EV drivers' perception. And they usually define, it is usually defined as the equipment should charge at an expected duration, with an appropriate payment method and at an expected rate. That's how EV drivers look at EV reliability. But an interesting aspect of this is also, like, if there is a physical obstruction in front of a EV charging station, that can also be considered as a reliability issue. So when we are discussing about EV reliability, it's very important to consider all these three measures. And there is no single definition for EV reliability here. So before we jump into the functionality aspect of EV reliability, I just want to describe the research method which I used. So it is important to note that data on EV reliability is not available. It's like very hard to get. So we looked at a mobile app called PlugShare, and we analyzed real-time big data from that mobile app. So we extracted data from that app, and we used data science and data mining techniques to analyze the data and come up with these graphs. So just to give you a brief description, what is PlugShare? So PlugShare is a desktop and mobile application which gives EV users useful information on the location of EV charging stations. They provide information on the functional statuses of connectors of EVs. They also provide customer reviews and other relevant information. And it is the only EV charging infrastructure app currently available. So in this research, to ensure validity of our data, we verified that we verified the PlugShare data, that the data is verified by satellite imagery, and the validation of the data we saw the validation of the data is done by contact site hosts of the charging stations. So to ensure validity, we ensured we verified the plug share data we used. And out of a sample size of 24,222 EV charging stations, we came up with this analysis that 85.22% of the EV charging connectors were available, whereas 14.78% of the EV charging connectors were not available. And this includes both AC and DC charging stations in the US. So this graph is very important because there are a lot of people who are under the false assumption that nearly 100% of the EV charging stations in the United States are operational, which is not true, as you can see from the graph. Secondly, if a lot of EV adopters, they suffer from this problem called range anxiety. So as you know, you can find a gas station every 1 mile, but you cannot find an EV charging station every 1 mile, right? So if EV charging stations have to compete with gas stations, we have to ensure that the charging stations are nearly 100% operational. And so this is something for future policymakers to consider. So next, out of the EV charging stations which were not operational, we tried to find out what are the reasons behind why they are not operational. And so if you can see here, these are some of the 3 major reasons we identified through the data we analyzed. So offline means that the charging station is not communicating with the network. Out of order means that the charging station is not operational, and under repair means that the charging station was not operational due to repairs. As you can see from the graph, that most of the issues are obviously with the network, with the charging station not communicating with the network. And this is a serious problem because if it's not connecting with the network, it can lead to problems such as loss of data, loss of revenue. It can also lead to poor charging experiences. So in order to improve the in order to resolve these problems, we need to ensure we have a reliable, ubiquitous network in our charging stations. So most of the previous research focuses on EV reliability issues in California. This research contributes by analyzing EV infrastructure reliability issues, not only in California, but in other parts of the United States as well. So we looked at EV charging reliability issues in the top 5 EV infrastructure states who had the largest number of EV charging stations. And it was surprising to see that 22% of the charging station in Washington state were not operational, and Washington state has a significant amount of EV adopters. And besides California, you can see other states are also showing a significant amount of EV reliability issues. So besides understanding, as I mentioned before, the functional aspect of EV reliability issues, it's also important to understand the EV driver's perspective on reliability, because the future of EV adoption is ultimately dependent on the EV owner's charging experience. So it's very important to understand what do they think about reliability. So this is a data from a survey. Approximately 1,290 EV drivers were surveyed, and they were asked what are the major barriers for EV adoption. Now, the most assumed thing, people assume that it's usually the availability of charging station, but this data shows us that the operational issues, charging station operational issues, are the second most highest concern for EV adopters, and it is considered as a barrier for adoption. So that's why it's so even EV adopters are considering it as the second highest major concern when it comes to adopting EVs. So through this study, we wanted to highlight some of the key problems of EV reliability. So several studies and surveys indicate poor customer experience with EV public charging stations. There is definitely a lack of data on EV charging station functionality, uptime measures, and maintenance. Through our data, we understood that power outages and network failure issues should be addressed when it comes to EV reliability. And also to ensure future EV reliability, there should be regular and there should be regular maintenance of the EV infrastructures. I want to talk about the contributions of this research. So this is one of the first studies to investigate EV charging reliability issues across the United States. There has been no studies before that which has investigated EV reliability issues across the US. So we analyzed huge amounts of data, and we used data science and data mining techniques to come up with these graphs. Then this study also integrates and studies EV reliability issues from different measures of charging station reliability. Most previous studies only focus on one type of reliability measure, but our study integrates all the different kinds of measures of understanding charging station reliability. And lastly, this study highlights the key problems of EV charging reliability across the United States, which has not been done before. Lastly, I would like to thank everybody, and if there are any questions, please let me know.
Really excellent. Thank you so much. And yeah, please go ahead, Cynthia. Oh, you're still on mute, Cynthia.
Okay, sorry, thank you. I think the presentation is very good. It's very interesting. As we, I have never seen this kind of report before. So for me, this is very interesting to see the reliability of the charging stations. As of now, we are, having a program to also installing more and more EV charging in the public space in various cities in the country. So if you could share the slides and can be used as a reference, that would be very good. But I think this is a great job. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
The slides can be shared.
Yeah, sure. I will definitely share the slides. I will definitely share it.
Thank you.
Great. Awesome. Any other questions for Mayuri? Looks like Barbara has one. Go ahead, Barbara.
So this is a real issue. I just want to say my friend went with her friend, and the Colorado people will understand, to Crested Butte for the weekend in his Tesla. And they hit so many malfunctioning charging stations that they could hardly get home. And they had to take this huge detour to get back to Denver. She was late picking up her kid. I mean, it was like a drama, right? The thing about it is that when charging stations aren't functional, then everybody who's looking for one will go to the one that is functional. So you get there and, it's taken. You can't charge. And I'm just wondering, like, if there's any discussion, conversation about, if we don't have the carrot of competition of charging stations, like, oh, okay, if this one doesn't work, fine, we'll go to the one next door, and they'll make the money, they'll make the profit. If we don't have the carrot, because there's just not enough investment right now, then we need a stick. We need a regulatory stick on some kind of penalty for charging stations that aren't being maintained. I mean, I don't know much about it, right? But like, I have an electric car, but I always charge at my house. But it's because I have another car when I want to go far. It's not fair. But I wonder if there's a you know, if there's some regulatory institution that could talk about what it would look like to have standards. Because if you go to a gas station, for example, you know, they test, is the octane that's advertised truly that octane? Like, they have very strict quality standards. You know, they're going and testing. There's strictness about the price that's advertised and the price that comes up at the pump. Like, all of that is very, very regulated. And I'm wondering if that's just kind of like a budding area for charging stations, that they should be regulated in terms of availability. Or is it the interoperability problem? Like, is it because there's no real standard, or, you know, there's different kinds of cars with different charging needs that are creating the maintenance trouble? Do you have any sense of why there's so many non-functioning stations?
Yeah, so first of all, like this EV reliability issue, like people hardly focus on that. People mostly focus on EV availability issue, but I mean, this is really an upcoming topic right now, and people policy analysts and other government officials, they are under the impression that like almost 100% of their EV charging stations are working. If not, at least out of 10 EV charging stations, only one would not be working, but almost they are under that impression that it is working, and nobody is actually focusing on that. And for standards to be actually given for EV reliability operational issues, we actually need to collect a lot of data, and currently there is no available data. Like, we personally had a strong time, a difficult time finding data, and we had to look at this mobile app and then extract. It was a difficult time to extract the data and analyze it, but we need more ground level data to be collected. And the CV reliability issue has been mostly focused in California. Like, our study goes beyond that to look at it all over the United States, but definitely we need more ground level data for for producing more regulations on EV reliability and getting the topic out to the public more, because people are not aware about this topic yet, and even the government officials are not focusing too much on EV reliability. Their policy genders are more focused on EV availability.
Sure. Yeah, and I wonder, I mean, I know like Tesla's opening up their stations for others to come and use and pay, like instead of it just being this sort of private network. I'm wondering if that will help, or, you know, I think there's got to be some carrot on private sector investment into charging infrastructure, or maybe it's that the price of the power at those stations needs to get a little bit higher, so, you know, it behooves them to keep them working so they make money. There's got to be, yeah, but certainly visibility is key. So thanks for bringing that up. I think that's really an important area.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for that really interesting and enlightening presentation. Do we have any other questions for the group? If not, we can turn the mic over to Kamakshi. Kamakshi, are you ready to share your screen?
Yes, I'm ready. Can you see my screen?
I think it's coming up. Yep, there you go.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to share with you some of the highlights of my summer internship. First, I would like to thank all partner institutions in the Global Power System Transformation Consortium, and yes, everyone present today. So I'll start by giving a little background about me. I'm Kamakshi. I was born and raised in Mumbai, India. I did my bachelor's in electrical engineering. This is when I worked closely with distribution, utility, renewable integration industry, and climate change awareness organization as part of various internships I did during my bachelor's. These experiences motivated me to pursue my master's in electrical and computer engineering at the University of Texas at Austin. At UT Austin, my concentration is at the sweet spot of power systems and power electronics. The summer of 2022 actually marks my internship at the National Renewable Energy Lab. My research and academic interests are applications of power electronics, optimization, and control systems and renewable integration of power systems. We'll first see all the exciting things I did as a WPST intern and then move to my summer research. This summer, I got to learn a lot from many researchers working on cutting edge technologies in my areas of interest. This internship was truly one of its kind. I actually made a lot of friends here and got my best friend too. I feel that the Sea Change program by Johns Hopkins was like a bridge filling the gap in interpersonal skills and engineering. I felt it was a wholesome experience as we got to interact one-on-one with women leaders like Karin, Irene, Guadalupe, Cynthia, Julia, and Lena. These women are truly inspiring. I was also fortunate to get one of the best technical mentors. Also, NREL sponsored our IEEE PES General Meeting at Denver. It happens to be one of the best power systems conference. Here, I could witness some of the amazing poster sessions, panel sessions, and committee meetings. It was fun to attend the Women in Power reception and the Young Professionals reception. This actually gave me an opportunity to network, to learn more about clean energy, and yes, to volunteer for the Power Systems Society. So I'll now move to discuss my summer research. I would like to give an overview of what all I explored at NREL. I'm an intern at the Energy Systems Integration Facility, which is also called as ESIF. Here, my mentors are Ben, Kropowski, Kumar, Andy, Yashwin. Ben happens to be the best mentor anyone can get. He is kind and patient enough to solve all my doubts. I would also like to thank Ryan, Haley, Sadie, and Karin because my experience at ESIF was really amazing. NREL also leads the Unified Consortium. So Ben is the organizational director for Unified. He was kind enough to give me an opportunity to explore this new world of inverter-based resources. I attended the Unified General Meeting held in RSF and NREL in the last week of July. It was an amazing experience to learn from researchers who actually lead the grid forming inverter domain. I also got an opportunity to visit the Flatirons campus, which is located at a very scenic landscape. Coming back to Unified, Unified stands for Universal Interoperability for Grid Forming Inverters. It is a US Department of Energy funded effort to advance grid forming inverter technology. It actually aims to foster an ecosystem to enable researchers, industry partners, and stakeholders to collaboratively pursue advances in the grid forming technology. And I was fortunate enough to witness this event. The Unified Consortium has different areas of focus. One such area on which I worked was intellectual property management. So my work was presented by Dr. Deepak Devan of Georgia Tech during the 2-day-long general meeting. This IP search helped me as well to get started with grid forming inverters. I had searched around 53 patents in the grid forming technology. So the first half of my internship was fruitfully spent doing literature review and understanding grid forming inverter-based resources. The next half went in researching about inverter-based resource modeling. The research problem I worked on in the next half was to use artificial intelligence to model grid forming inverters. I'll share my research work on this problem in detail in the next few slides. Okay, so as seen in figure A, the present power system has historically been dominated by synchronous generators having large rotational inertia. And as seen in figure B, the future systems will have a significant fraction of inverter-based generation resources. The traditional grid dominance of synchronous machinery has shaped today's state-of-art grid analysis tools and their transient response performance. Because of high penetration of inverter-based resources, there are many open research questions that have come up. The dynamics of converter systems and the overall stability of power systems can no longer be neglected as in past. We need the accurate models of inverter-based resources for transient and dynamic analysis because of declining system strength, inverter control interactions, and control instabilities. There are numerous efforts made in literature to derive detailed dynamic models, but using detailed models becomes complicated and computationally prohibitive in large system studies. For instance, Australia is using an electromagnetic transient model of its entire network for operational planning studies. Similarly, Texas and New England have developed EMT models of large proportions of their networks with high IBR concentrations to evaluate stability limits. My summer research is focused on understanding black box approach to model the dynamics of a grid following inverter. The goal is to create an accurate model of a commercial inverter and use it in a medium voltage distribution network. The network is being modeled in EMT software called PSCAD. Now, to study the dynamics and transient stability of IBRs, there are three things to be done. One is to model the medium voltage distribution grid. Second is to model the inverter mathematically. And last is to integrate both. So the first step was to model the IEEE 13 bus system in EMT. As discussed in the previous slide, I used EMT because EMT simulations are necessary for transient events where frequency other than fundamental is to be studied. When modeling IBRs, it is essential to choose the right power electronic converter model type, selecting component values and estimating the converter's response under different scenarios. There are different PEC models like switching, average, positive sequence, dynamic phasor, and data-driven. Each model comes with its own set of advantages and disadvantages. For my research, I concentrated more on data-driven models. In case of data-driven models, there are different advantages like we do not need any prior knowledge of converter's internal structure, nor any of its parameters. Also, it is capable of detecting parameter degradation. The mathematical models, in case of data-driven models, are less computationally demanding than the parameterized model. Yet there are some disadvantages to these techniques, like we need large data sets and we need to train them. It is also only suitable for systems with operational field data. There are limitations on nonlinear dynamics and waveform. Also, precision of the model depends on the time step of the data collected. Owing to the switching nature of power electronic systems, the dynamic behavior of these converters is generally nonlinear. Starting from 1970s, many researchers have concentrated on obtaining the dynamic model of power electronic systems using small signal analysis. However, the small signal modeling can neither handle large signal perturbations nor predict harmonics and subharmonic frequency components. Nonlinear modeling approaches to power electronic systems have been proposed. Circuit-oriented models need circuit idealization and detailed knowledge of system operation. Instead of this modeling approach, the dynamic behavior of power electronic systems can be modeled using system identification. There are actually different types of system identification model, which include Volterra series, state space, block structured, NARMAX, neural networks, etc. During my internship, I explored the block structured and NARMAX model. So nonlinear system identification is nothing but coming up with a transfer function when we know the input and output of a given system. So for carrying out the nonlinear system identification, we had an experimental setup and our experimental setup consisted of an utility three-phase inverter, which was connected to a standalone terrestrial solar array PV simulator and a high power AC test system simulator. There was an RTDS simulator connected and data was stored, which collected the input and output of the inverter at different fault conditions. The inverter was SMA Sunny Tri-Power, and the ratings were as shown on the screen. It was a utility interactive three-phase inverter with a nominal voltage of 277 volts AC. So what are grid following inverters? I've presented a schematic of grid connected inverter system operating in current mode. On the slide, the inverter is connected to the electric grid through a low pass filter with inductance LF and capacitance CF. The inductance of the grid is represented by LG. The inverter is being operated in grid following mode, injecting the reference active and reactive power commands P star and Q star respectively. A phase locked loop is used to track the phase angle of the grid, theta PLL. Then a current controller is employed to control the current being injected into the grid. The dynamics of this inverter system depends on various factors such as operation power level, DC voltage, parameters of current controller, and parameters of the phased locked loop. The dynamic response of the grid current, for instance, depends largely on the control system being employed. The design and controller gains are different for different manufacturers. The inverter seen in the previous slide is now replaced with a black box. The 5 inputs are DC voltage, DC current, and the 3-phase AC voltages. The experimental DC input measurements are pulsating due to some noise. The 3 outputs include the 3-phase AC currents. So we have a multi-input, multi-output system. The difference between the existing literature and this research is that we are attempting to model a multi-input, multi-output dynamic system, which is pretty complex in nature. Previous works were concerned only with single-phase inverters. We will now consider 2 cases. The first one is when the system is in steady state and the input and outputs as shown in this slide. The second case is when there is some transient in the system and the inputs and outputs are as seen in this slide. So the first thing that we do is to train and test the data. So for the first case, when we are considering steady state, all the 5 inverter inputs and the 3 inverter outputs were divided into train and test data as seen in this slide. On this data set, different training approaches were tried out in MATLAB and Python. Again, for the second case, all the 5 inverter inputs and the 3 inverter outputs were divided into train and test data. On this data set, different training approaches were tried out. The different system identification methods that I used were the HW and Knox methods in MATLAB and different regression models and libraries like system identification, Python library, the lasso regression, stochastic gradient descent, and ridge regression in Python. So the first method that I tried out was the Hammerstein-Wiener model. HW is one of the methods I implemented on MATLAB. It is used when output of a system depends non-linearly on its input. It decomposes the input-output relationship into 2 or more interconnected elements. The dynamics are represented by linear transfer function. The non-linearities in the system are captured by using non-linear functions of input and outputs of the linear system. It is actually a series connection of static non-linear blocks with a dynamic linear block. The linear block is a discrete transfer function that represents the dynamic components of the model. NARX stands for nonlinear autoregressive for exogenous inputs. This was the second method that I implemented on MATLAB. Knox consists of model regressors and an output function. Output function contains 1 or more mapping objects, 1 for each model output. Each mapping object can include a linear and a nonlinear function that acts on the model regressors to give the model output and a fixed offset for their output. The block diagram on the slide represents the structure of a single output nonlinear ARX model in a simulation scenario. Now, the slide shows a comparison of the simulation results for Knox and HW model for the first current of the 3-phase current IA. here we see that NARX does better than the HW model. There's a similar comparison for the second current, IB, of the three-phase current. Again, NARX does way better than HW model. And the slide represents the third current of the three-phase current, IC, where HW is performing poorly than NARX. My second case was to study the system where there are transients. So I ran the same models for the system which consisted of transients. And again, NARX performed way better than HW. This slide represents current IA. This is current IB. And this is current IC. The next thing that I did was trying out a library, different libraries in sklearn package of scikit-learn on Python. Scikit-learn is an open source machine learning library that supports supervised and unsupervised learning. It also provides various tools for model fitting, data preprocessing, model selection, model evaluation, and many other utilities. Scikit-learn provides dozens of built-in machine learning algorithms and models called estimators. Each estimator can be fitted to some data using fit methods. Coming to approaches I used in Python, the different estimators that I tested were Lasso Ridge, SGD, and System Identification Python library of scikit-learn. I compared different models and their accuracies and got to know that Ridge and Lasso performed well, but the accuracy isn't that great to be actually implemented. So I would be working to experiment with other estimators that sklearn offers, and I'll be comparing their accuracies as well. So after doing different modeling techniques and studying different algorithms, I feel that I would be implementing artificial neural networks to model NARX model because NARX performed well than HW models. Then these mathematical models would be used in EMT. I would be then simulating high inverter penetrated grid conditions on EMT. Different experiments would be run for different fault scenarios, which would include open circuit, short circuit, etc. I'll be considering the entire range of operations from startup to shutdown, and then I'll be comparing the accuracy with the existing models. I would be running experiments with different models of commercial inverters and maybe try to model grid forming inverters similarly. So what I'll be doing after my internship is we would be trying to work on a paper on modeling of inverters, which might get published in IEEE Transactions on AI. I'll be continuing my research with my mentors here at PSEC during the fall semester, and I'll return back to school to complete my master's thesis. I'm now open to any questions, and thank you so much to everyone who attended my presentation today.
Excellent. Thanks, Kamakshi. That was all super interesting, and I feel like I learned a lot. See if there's questions from the group here. Barbara, it looks like you might have one.
I have lots. This was a really great presentation. Thank you. So I'm just a little confused because maybe I just missed it. But were you doing physical hardware in the loop for that SMA inverter? Or was this all simulated?
Yes, my mentor is performing all those experiments, and he kind of gives me all the data and shows me how he runs those experiments.
Nice. That is fantastic. Okay, and so you looked at grid following. So was that inverter set to like unity power factor mode, or was there any chance that you could play with, some kind of different different forced reaction, like a volt-var reaction or something like that?
Yeah, as of now, the PF was 1, but we plan to perform different experiments based on IEEE 1547 standards and IEEE 2008 standards, so that we could play around with the volt-var control method and stuff like that.
Okay, so you were really mostly testing just sort of how the models, how successful they are at the simulation. So it was like, let's compare the different methods, right?
Yes, yes. And then figure out which is the most accurate method.
Yeah. And then in the end, was the method, I mean, I saw the results. So the NARCS method and the HW, are they open source? I missed that.
Yeah, NARCS and HW are open source on MATLAB. And I would be trying out different deep learning methods for the NARCS model. I mean, that is the main goal, but that might take a few more months.
Yeah. Yeah, really great work. In the next steps or, you know, ongoing work, you mentioned, you know, GFL as well as GFM inverters, and then there was SC. Are you talking about some, I don't know, series compensators, or what does SC mean?
SC is like synchronous condensers, because if I don't have a generator, I'll need an SC.
Okay. Well, that's great. Well, we look forward to seeing what your future internship. So you're working with Kumar directly?
Yes, I'm working with Kumar directly.
Awesome. That'll be great. Thanks for a wonderful presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much for your questions. Thank you.
Excellent. Any others? Really great work, Kamakshi. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have up next is Gayathri Jagadeesh, and then we have one more presentation after that. So we're coming in on the finish line here. Take it away, Gayathri.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Let me just share my screen. Let me know once it's up. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Before I start my presentation, I would just like to cheer on everybody who got to present their work here. Really great work, and I got to learn a lot even sitting here. So yeah. To everybody else, this is my presentation. I'm Gayathri. Today I'll be talking about the Power Water Network Coordination. My mentor is Clayton Barrows. This is how I've structured my presentation. We would go into the scope, the approach, the different challenges, and take a look at the work that I've done, maybe some future scope of work. A brief introduction. I am a graduate student in North Carolina State University, currently pursuing my master's in electrical engineering. I'm also a student researcher at the NC Clean Energy Technology Center. Before, pursuing my master's, I worked with Siemens for about 3 years, and I also have my bachelor's in electrical engineering. I'm currently a graduate intern here at NREL, and my areas of interest are, broadly in the renewables, the analytics, more like I want to, have an intersection between the power systems and the digitization. So yeah. So let's take a quick look at my work that I've done over summer. So power water networks. So the very first thought, when I looked at, the water networks, my immediate understanding was, okay, we'll be doing something with the hydropower and maybe the grids. But yeah, I was wrong. So we're actually looking at the water distribution systems and how we could coordinate the water distribution systems with the power network, and how we could schedule the power supplies, and how we could, basically everything that, a water network could impact on the electric grid. So the scope for power water networks, the water distribution system consumes like a significant portion of the electricity in the US public water supplies. So the figure is close to like 39.2 terawatts, and 80% of this consumption is through the pumps. So the electrical consumption by the pumps. Another thing to be noted, the water distribution systems are vertically integrated, and it allows the grid operators to aggregate large demand response capabilities with small number of distribution operators. And many WDS have excess water tank storage, and you could switch on the pumps at any point in time, and it provides a lot of flexibility. So pumping within the distribution network is a standalone process and it can be stopped instantly and independently. So this kind of lays like a groundwork as to how we could actually integrate the water distribution network with the electrical network. So the approach, both power and water networks are critical infrastructures. Their operations are intrinsically coupled at various scales. At the same time, right now, they're also being operated independently. So the idea is to have a co-optimized network and see how this would be more beneficial. So our approach was to figure out an optimal water power flow. A lot of work has already gone in, and what an OPWF does is to optimize use of controllable assets across the power and water networks, accounting for the couplings between the two networks. In the power networks, we're looking at the AC optimal power flow, and the water networks, we're looking at how we could optimally manage the tanks and the volumes of the water levels in the tanks and the pumps, and how we could improve the power grid operations. Some challenges. Optimal power flow is something that's commonly solved, and almost everybody's doing it. Scheduling a water flow, again, is a commonly solved problem, but scheduling it such a way that you could integrate it with the power networks is something very challenging. And a lot of computation is required, primarily because of the nonlinearity which is involved in the water physics and a lot of other constraints that get added. So like I mentioned, a lot of work has already gone in exploring the various optimization techniques with different water models in order to arrive at an optimal power water flow. So what am I doing? So here's something that I carved out a problem statement with my mentor to analyze the benefits of coordinated water networks over the decoupled networks and the networks with minimal coordination. So this was the tech stack that I was using. I learned Julia and Jump. Jump is Julia for mathematical programming. And I would just like to give a big highlight for the power simulations package that I was using, which was developed here at NREL. It was super cool and super user-friendly. The other major packages that were needed were power model distribution, water models, and yeah. Here's a quick visualization of what I thought a water network would look like. All of these visualizations are done with light graphs and network graphs in Julia. So we are looking at our tank, our different pumps located at different locations, and these are the nodes. Similar to that was a 13-bus power network where we have different loads located at different points. To get a feel of what's happening, here's a general workflow with your power and water networks. In the whole process, we build a distribution network or a feeder network where we have the water loads or the pump loads, and we have the loads on the power network itself. And then we build a transmission model, and then these loads are added, feeder loads are added to the transmission network, and we're solving the optimization problem. So case one, no coordination between power and water networks. Pretty much like a base case where each of the networks are operating independently. And the idea is to understand how they operate independently, figure out what the estimated total generation cost is. And this would be used as a base to compare it with the other two cases that we're looking at. So what happens in the base case? The water system operator solves an optimal water flow problem to minimize the power consumption based on the flat energy prices set for the pumps. Then the power consumed by water pumps are then used as an input to the AC optimal power flow problem solved by the power distribution operator. Similar workflow. Here what we're doing is first we are setting the flat energy prices of every pump, running the optimal water flow, adding the pump loads to the power loads, rerunning the we're running the optimal power flow then. Once that is done, on the transmission side, we're running the optimal dispatch, and then we get the total cost of generation. Some quick insights as to how the cost of generation varied over the day with no coordination, the tank volume, and what the total generation looked like. And we were arriving at a cost of $2,004 per megawatt hour over here. Some quick observations. There was no impact on the tank volumes for different flat energy prices set. So we kind of dealt with different numbers just to see if we had a higher value or a lower value for the flat energy prices. Was there any major impact? And no, there was no impact. The total generation peaks closer to 2 p.m. in the afternoon hours, which we can see over here. The highest cost of generation was at about $8,600 per megawatt, and the total cost of generation was $2,004.48 per megawatt. The next case was minimal coordination of power and water networks. Here we are trying to see if we had like very little interaction. We did coordinate, but not so closely, or it was not so tightly coupled. This could also be taken as a price taker case. So what is a price taker case? The electricity prices are set by the power distribution operator based on the OP power flow solution. After the water system operator solves an optimal water flow to minimize the power consumption based on the electricity prices set. The power consumed by water pumps is then used as an input to the AC optimal power flow problem to set new electricity prices. Here, only one iteration of OPF, OPWF, OWF, and then OPF is performed. Otherwise, it's just going to be a cyclic process. So again, a similar workflow. On the distribution side, we would run the optimal power flow to get the generation prices. We apply the obtained prices to optimal water flow, run the optimal water flow, add pump loads to the power loads. And then on the transmission side, we run the dispatch and then calculate the total generation cost. In terms of cost of generation and the tank volume, we see like a similar graph that we saw for the previous case, but the total generation with minimal coordination seemed to be very stable. Like, although you could not see the magnitude over here, but there might be a very slight difference, but it was very stable. And although a minimal coordination did provide a little bit of savings, but it was not significant. So there is no variation in the total generation. It does not peak or dip. And we saw a similar cost of generation and total cost of generation. This is something that is interesting everybody because this is the co-optimization of power and water networks. What we do over here is we set the initial price, that is the generation cost. We run the optimal power water flow, obtain an initial feeder load, add feeder loads to the transmission network, run the dispatch, and calculate the total cost of generation. We see a lot of savings in this case. The total generation during the co-optimization is a lot lower. The total generation, the amount of generation that's required is also much lower. This is a quick comparison, and comparing each case and different parameters. We see very little savings in the minimal coordination, but there still are savings compared to the base case. But with the co-optimized network, we see some significant savings, and the maximum generation range has been about the same. We do have a lower value for the final objective in the co-optimized networks. So what we can conclude from this, the joint optimization of power and water infrastructures is definitely bringing significant benefits to the operation and economic perspective. Like a coupled optimization approach enhances flexibility in scheduling of utilities for power and water distribution networks. Controllable access of water utilities can also provide valuable services to power systems to enhance their reliability and efficiency. And the incentives for provisioning of grid services to electric utilities could be used by water system operators for capital improvements and capacity expansion. The future scope of work for this project, we could expand with a larger power distribution network, with a larger water distribution network, and also explore the demand response capacity of the water distribution system. A lot of work has already been done over here as well, but see how well we could coordinate with the renewable penetration and with more improvements on the grid. And we could also take a look at the impact of optimization on the electricity markets, the day-ahead pricing, the LBMP pricing. So these were some things. Here's a quick, like a GIF of, what my day-to-day screen would look like while I was working. Some highlights of my internship. I thoroughly enjoyed my time here at NREL, and I was fortunate enough to attend the IEEE Power Energy Society General Meeting. It was a great opportunity to really learn what are the latest advancements in all the transactions that are happening, and I got to meet a lot of people and network. The WPST coffee chats were a great place to network and know what other women who are doing exceptional work in the industry. And the Sea Change was also a very good opportunity to explore the leadership aspects. And I also enjoyed my time in Colorado, going on a lot of hikes and meeting a lot of people. So these were some highlights of my internship. And with this, I'm open to questions, and thank you so much.
Really excellent and just so interesting. It looks like we have a question from Clayton. Go ahead, Clayton.
I was actually trying to applaud, but so I wasn't really intending to. Since I'm familiar with the work, I'll let others ask questions. But if there are none, I can think of one.
Great, thanks, Clayton.
Since I don't see anybody jumping in. Oh, Barbara, go
I'll
ahead.
jump in, Clayton. Oh my gosh, it's such cool work. Wow. And it was really fabulous presentation. I will give you advice, because surely at some point you're going to give this presentation again, because it's that amazing. Slow down. I was like, what? There was so much coming at me. The slides were really dense, and then your speaking rate was quick. So I was just like, oh, I want to hear, I want to go back and read it and digest it. But
I'm sorry.
No, you had so much to say in this short period of time. I get it, right? It's really cool work. How great. And I had been involved in this NOWI project at NREL, and I was aware of sort of how there's all this opportunity to really help with lower the power consumption by the water system, and how we can really kind of co-optimize. Clayton, I hope Jordan Magnet kind of got involved in this as well. I'm sure there was some talk up to the water guys at NREL. One little question I have was this: there was a $8,600 power price at 0 hours. What was that? Why was that?
Exactly. I wasn't sure as well. We were first thinking that probably that was an error, but my inference from that was probably since the demand is low and you're supposed to have generation, if there is any, at that point in time, the cost of generating something to meet the demand at that hour would be high. So that is my understanding, that why 8,600 at that point in time was high.
Oh, I was hoping it was, sort of, because it's such a renewable penetrated system, that there was just an expensive thermal, which it might be. Okay, and then in terms of having water distribution companies put in solar panels on their pumps in the places where they need to move water around. Do you know much about if there is that kind of penetration of just PV onto these distribution systems, literally at the pumping locations?
So while doing a literature review, there has already been work that's gone in that has analyzed the impact of how the PV penetration could be impacted with scheduling the pump loads suitably, and there is a significant improvement. I think I'm referencing a paper. I could just share that with you. So it says that the power curtailment from the PV system is minimized with the discrepancy given from the set point of the power at the substation. So I could just send over this paper as well, but yes, there is significant impact on the PV curtailment.
Nice. Well, anyway, thank you. It was fantastic. Clayton, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll ask one quick question. So just to like summarize everything, are we, is this something that we should do? Is there value in using the flexibility in the water system to shift the time of use consumption in the power system? Like, does it make sense?
It does. Initially, I was a little clueless as to like, is it really impacting? But I see there's a lot of potential, and it definitely makes sense to, do more work in this area.
Cool. And then just following up on some of Barbara's comments, this is part of, I think it's related to G-PST, but it's part of a project that's funded by OE. And our next steps, kind of once we kind of continue doing some of what Gayathri started here, is to try and understand what the right way to do this coordination, recognizing this coordination would be challenging. So should you build a battery or a solar panel, or should you actually do this demand response type coordination between the power and water systems? And so there's a lot of questions there, and we're using what Gayathri set up to start exploring those next set of questions in the next year or so. Thanks, Gayathri.
Fantastic.
Great job.
Thank you.
Really incredible.
Yeah.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, if there are no other questions, perhaps Treisa will let you take over and give the last presentation of the day.
Can I share my screen?
Yes, please do.
Do let me know when you see it.
We can see it now.
Okay. Okay. So hi everybody. My name is Treisa Ravi Sahaya. I'm an intern at EPRI, and I'm working with the protection team here at EPRI, which is managed by Mike Guinness, and I'm also part of the technical innovation that is under the strategic insights team, and I'm writing a white paper on integration of DER integration simulations and tools. So this was a brief introduction to the title page that I have here with me. I would like to thank EPRI and the EPRI and NREL for giving this opportunity for all us in the team to present our researches, our findings, and our learnings in our internships. About me, I come from India. I come from Bombay. I have pursued my bachelor's in electrical engineering under Mumbai University, and I'm right now here in Dublin pursuing my master's in electrical power systems. I have a work experience of 3 years, and I worked for an electrical consultant, ETAP, and right now, as I mentioned before, I'm interning under EPRI. The two people that have been working under here at EPRI are Mark McGrannon and Sean McGuinness. So talking about my past experiences, back in ETAP, I used to carry out power system studies, which included load flow analysis, motor starts, relay coordination, arc flash studies. And apart from that, another software that I was introduced back there was CDEGS, where we used to carry out electromagnetic field studies for traction corridors and also design earthing for substations. Back in April right now here, I'm working on developing a handbook for protection schemes for fax devices, and working closely with Sean on developing the schemes as well as the philosophies that are required to understand the protection coordination for fax devices. Apart from that, I am also involved with the technical innovation group and writing a white paper on modeling simulation tools and approaches for integrated energy systems and smart communities. I also spent some time with the low carbon resource initiative team here in tech scouting and figuring out the companies, startups, and universities which are actually carrying out researches for technologies that deal with green hydrogen. I'm also, luckily, I'm also a part of the diversity and inclusion group here at the Dublin office. This is so talking about my work that I used to do at ETAP and at EPRI. I'll walk you through some of the slides that I've got that I've managed to put together. So this is basically this is something about I was talking about earlier. That is the earthing system that I had designed for a refinery, and we used to carry out fault analysis and see the step voltage and touch voltage development at each and every substation that's there in the refinery. So this is a modeling that I've carried out in CDGS, and we used to we used to prepare safety analysis reports and determine whether the particular site is suitable for personnel to work or not under cases of faults or under cases of lightning. Coming to what I do at EPRI is something, so as I told you, I design protection devices, protection device philosophies and schemes for fax devices. So this is just a brief introduction of what I've been doing under Sean. Yes, this is something I would like to discuss. So basically what goes into designing a protection system is a basic understanding of the system and the kind of faults and protection devices that have been installed in your system. So looking closely, I could chalk down 5 basic steps into what goes into scheming, what goes into building a scheme for a protection system. So basically, you need to detect the kind of fault that you are dealing with. Thirdly, you need to identify the zone of the fault, as in where the fault, as in which area you need to focus on when there is a fault, which equipment needs to be protected, how it needs to be protected, what kind of relays need to be set up there, what kind of circuit breakers need to be set up there, so that the fault is quenched and it does not travel through the system and cause cascading effects, thereby damaging the other equipments in the power system. Thirdly, as I mentioned, operation of relays and CVs in the affected zone. Fourthly, we need to closely monitor, and the kind of alarming and acting system should be well communicated. It shouldn't be so that you raise an alarm and the system that is supposed to isolate your equipment from the system doesn't really act on it. This might end up just feeding the fault with more current. So your tripping system needs to be pretty accurate and pretty agile at the same time. Fifth, and the most important part that is something a protection engineer should take care, is restoring the system after the fault has been cleared. So it's just not, the work doesn't end after you have detected the fault and then you have sort of found a solution. You need to get that system back into the power system and get it working. So this is these are some of the outlines that I've been working on with Sean. Secondly, I've been working on this technical innovation white paper, where I have focused on modeling and simulation tools and approaches for integrated energy systems in smart communities. So my study focused on questions, and this is something I've tried to get out through my white paper: the tools and models that are used for integrating distributed resources, what are the steps involved in the planning, and how small communities can effectively communicate with the utility and contribute their share contribute their share of renewables. Lastly, what I've been looking in through this paper is the efficiency of how efficient our energy transition from conventional to renewable will be. How are we from the utility right down to each and every house are going to benefit out of this whole idea of energy transition. In this white paper research that I had to do, I have also come across good material regarding green buildings, building models, and complex structures, and also energy storing capabilities. What comes next for me is that I finished my year more of masters at University College Dublin, where I'll be doing my master thesis. Following that, I would like to work and be associated with the power sector, especially with technologies that are associated with sustainability and renewability. What I would also like to follow up is something to do with electromagnetic field studies, which I'm very interested in. So that would be something coming up next on my plate. Talking about my experience in the women power system consortium is that one of the way is that I got really good opportunity to communicate with the women in women at leading positions at in the energy sector, and something that I could really reflect out of the C workshop that we had done in the month of June and July are these four things, that is personal behavior, negotiation skills, smart goals, overcoming limiting beliefs. So there goes my answer for a leader. Do I feel like a leader? I wouldn't say 100% sure, but yes, definitely I do feel a step closer to what I want to achieve and what I really wanted out of this whole workshop. So yes, I do feel really happy that I was a part of it. Thirdly, talking about gender equity and women in leadership, gender equity, it's very common it's very commonly practiced in all of the leading companies, but the fact that it has to be spoken about and discussed about separately is something we need to work on, and it should be taught to students and children right at the elementary level. And I would just want to see that we as women grow up to more leading positions, and we just don't stay or compromise at entry level or senior manager position, and grow up to become leaders and sort of inspire others in the community. Lastly, talking about women in energy sector, this is a small graph about what is the percentage of women that are there in the energy sector. So currently, the fact that it is dominated by men, it needs to see more women coming into the energy sector, and this wouldn't be possible if women don't take up challenges like getting into the fields of engineering or science or technology. They need to take up that challenge to themselves, challenge their own intelligence and competence, and get to the position and work hard to get to the position that we really dream of. Lastly, I would like to, in my closing statement, I'd just like to present the fact that the profession of engineering is responsible for building the society, and therefore it should be balanced and it should be a reflection of society. And it is very important that women, who are a major part of the society, contribute and take up the challenge and initiative to work towards this initiative. So thank you so much. I'm open for questions now.
So fantastic. Thanks, Treisa. I think, Barbara, go ahead.
Treisa, thank you so much for that. It covered, it was very broad and comprehensive. It sounds like you're doing great work in so many areas. So I'm just a little confused about the work on facts versus the work on DER protection. Are these two different areas entirely, or are you trying to use the facts technology into, kind of pull it down from transmission level into the DER space?
No, these are the work I'm doing here are two separate the things in itself. So DER, that is basically it's basically assimilating tools and simulation models, and facts protection device is totally different. So it is something that I've been doing with Sean, and we have had projects that are already there. They are not interlinked to to clear that confusion of yours. They're not interlinked, they're separate. And it's just that I'm designing the sort of a handbook for facts protection, because the kind of where it comes and it links my studies is that the grid is seeing high renewable penetration these days. So it is very difficult for a generator, for utilities to kind of have the protection set at their level and not coordinate with the lower levels where they're seeing in penetration in renewable resources. So these two have been separate, but eventually these in future need to go hand in hand in order to have a resilient system.
Okay, that's really helpful for clarifying. And then for the fax protection settings, I just don't know enough about it, but is there IEC or IEEE standards? I'm just wondering because in G-PST we have an IEEE code pillar, and I'm wondering if we could tie that into work on the fax protection settings. Do you know of any published standards?
IEEE does not exclusively has a standard for it, but SIGRE has a lot of papers presented. So I have a few SIGRE papers for which I refer to actually to build my set of resources. So this is something new, and this is while the protection has been in the electrical industry since the time it began. So it's just that these devices are pretty new. They are power electronic based devices. So the research and development of technology is still going on in this field. So might not get a lot of resources on them, but yes, there are a few papers that do indicate there.
Where are you located? Did you say you're in Ireland?
Dublin.
Yeah, you're in Dublin. So are you looking at the AirGrid system in terms of if they have utilization of fax on their systems? I'm just curious. I'm not familiar with if they are. They must be. Maybe. I mean, they're so progressive.
Yes, they do have that, but at EPRI we are not working with them. We work with the National Grid UK. So we had more cases from the National Grid UK that we were studying. So there we came across a few cases.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Anyone else? Well, really, really great work, everybody. I think all of the women here deserve a huge round of applause for their excellent efforts this summer. And I'll just say it was such a pleasure to watch these presentations and get a better understanding of the generative and thought-provoking experiences that all of you had this summer across both the personal and professional and technical realms. So really, really excellent job. It's a testament to you all, everything that you accomplished in 10 short weeks. And thank you everyone for being here to celebrate with us this final gathering of women in PST. I think I'll ask the women in PST folks to stay on for a little bit. We'll try to do a picture at the end if that's okay with everybody, since this is our last time together. But thank you everyone for being here and for the great questions and engaging discussion. This is just a really excellent way to conclude our Women in PST summer.